Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Triple N Media. I am Dr. NIK NIKAM. This is COVID-19 World News Update. Before we go any further, I would like you to take a look at my COVID-19 Pandemic, an international guide, which is available on Amazon.com, and you can also check my other publications while you're there. The main feature presentation for today's topic is when will the COVID-19 pandemic end here in the United States? Will it ever end? That's the first question. Let us begin. As of January 24, actually it is supposed to be 24, the flights were prepared on 23rd. Anyway, January 24, there have been close to 100 million people who have been infected with the coronavirus all across the globe, resulting in 2.134 million deaths. Here in the United States, we have 25.6 million people who have tested positive for the coronavirus, with a death toll of 428,000 and increasing at a rate of 3,000 to 4,000 per day. This is the daily number of cases chart, which will be the foundation for us to determine if this pandemic is going to last forever, when will it slow down, or when will it stop. It started in the end of first week of March, and this is our first wave, where we had approximately 20,000 cases max. When the restrictions were lifted, lockdowns were lifted towards the end of May, then we had a second wave with approximately 75,000 cases per day peaking, and then we had almost 300 cases during this mega wave, which is equal to the second wave we have seen in the European countries. The interesting thing I wanted to focus is even though we had we're going from 25,000 to 300,000 cases, that is 10 times the number of cases between March and April and January 2021. But that is almost equal to 10 times increase in the number of people testing positive. But if you look at the death rate at the peak of the first wave was approximately 2,700, and the death rate with 10 times increasing the number of cases still was around 4,000 cases per day. So this dichotomy between the 10-time increase in the number of active cases versus a 25% increase in the mortality is called case-demic, where we are detecting a lot of cases. And this boils down to the test that we use, which is the PCR, which not only detects the virus, live virus that is capable of transmitting the infection, it also detects the virus remnants, the RNA fragments, and dead viruses. So these tests can be sort of misleading, and that is reflected in the mortality of the daily death rates. Right now, there are 175,000 cases per day. And let's look at the time frame it took to go from zero to the peak during the first wave. And this is a time frame, and look how long it took for it to come down. It didn't even reach the bottom before the second wave hit, and this is how long it took for the second wave to reach the peak. And again, it never reached the bottom. We were still seeing 20, 25, 30,000 cases, and this is where this mega wave, the third wave, which started in the middle of October, and it has taken the middle of January to reach the top. That is approximately 3 months. Let's keep that in mind. Here, as you can see, whatever the time duration was taken for the wave to reach the peak, it took much longer to come down, and it never hit the bottom. That means, based on these past two waves, which are related to the real data, we can assume that it is going to take this much longer for the wave to reach this level or somewhere below that level. Keeping that in mind, since it took 3 months for the upstroke of the third wave, it may take 3 months or longer to reach a reasonably controllable rate. And a vaccination may help us to enhance this deceleration or the decline of this number of cases, and hopefully we can achieve that goal a little bit earlier. We'll see. And here is a study that was reported by the researchers at the Columbia University, where they looked at a mathematical model, and they came up with the conclusion that the number of cases that we are seeing here, such as 250, 275, 300,000 per day, is a fraction of the cases that their mathematical model identifies. They are identifying like 1 million daily cases. And if you go back here, million daily cases is approximately like 1/4 of the cases detected. So the first assumption is that for every case that we have been able to detect, there may be 4 or even 5 cases which could be positive, but these people may be asymptomatic or they have not been tested. The second point I would like to make is, as I said, the downslope of the wave is taking much longer than the upslope, whereas in this chart, the downslope looks to be taking a shorter duration compared to the upstroke, which is sort of a very optimistic view, let me put it that way, because based on these 3 waves, there is no way you're going to reach this level in less than 3 months. Taking these 2 things into assumption, still this study points out certain concepts based on which we can determine when this pandemic is going to end or when this pandemic is going to come under control, and what we need to do to make sure we achieve that point in the safest possible way. Let's continue with this. And based on this same mathematical model, right now we have people who for the majority are following self-mitigation rules such as wearing masks, washing hands, and maintaining social distance, reducing travel, and using home office as much as possible. And if we continue to do that, this is what we expect to see, and even that is too optimistic. But if the state governors who are watching this pay attention to what I'm going to say next, if you lift the restrictions, if you open up the restaurants, the beaches, the nightclubs, and gatherings, obviously there's going to be another spike related to the opening up of the restrictions that can increase the number of cases by 29 million. And of course, you have to remember, this is based on the mathematical model where for every case we detected in the past, there were 4 to 5 cases that were not reported. Again, if the restrictions were continued until the beginning of April, then the number of additional cases may be 6 million. And here it shows, depending on when we lift the restrictions, as how the waveform will change. In fact, if we were to continue the restrictions as we are doing while continuing the vaccination program, we can increase the steepness of this downslope and reduce 19 million cases of infection. That is again a very optimistic number, but again, remember, this is based on the mathematical model. But the concept is what I am interested in focusing. The concept is what I want to emphasize. And before I apply this concept, I want to show you the graph of new cases in India, which started going up towards the beginning of April, and it took like September. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months to reach a peak where it was having 100 cases per day. Now it is down to like 10,000 cases per day, and obviously it took September, October, November, December, January, almost same time or longer. It takes longer for the waveform to come down than it takes for it to go up. Let's keep that in mind. Now let's look at and see where we are today, where we started, and the course we have traveled. When do we expect this waveform to come down to like maybe 5 to 10,000 cases, maybe 20,000 cases per day. But I don't think we're going to reach the bottom as it is shown here. Right now, we have 175,000 cases per day. And if you remember, it took like at least 3 to 4 months, took like 1, 2, 3, 4 months to reach the peak. So from the middle of January, we are talking about the middle of May before we can begin to see this waveform coming down to a level below this. Okay, what about the implications of this? Number one, here we have an introduction of the vaccine. The vaccine, if it can reach 100 million people during this time, then the steepness of the decline could be accelerated. Number one. Number two, remember, even though we have 25 million people who have shown to be infected, we still have over 300 million people who are vulnerable to the coronavirus infection. As of today, 20 million people have received at least their first dose of vaccine. So even if we were to predict that we can vaccinate 100 million people in the next 3 to 4 months, that still leaves 200 million people vulnerable to COVID infection. So putting all these pieces together, I would say that we are looking at reaching some sort of a manageable level of COVID infection towards the June, July timeframe. Putting all these pieces together, I would say, even if you have received the vaccine, even if you had a COVID infection, and let's say you even had antibodies because you had asymptomatic COVID infection, still you could be vulnerable. I mean, that is not counting the millions of people who have never been exposed to the virus yet. How do we address this? One, I think we need to continue the self-mitigation rules, namely working remotely, minimizing travel, minimizing mixing with people, wearing masks. This could result in reduction in millions of new cases and tens of thousands of deaths. But most importantly, it could save your life. I mean, that is the bottom line. I hope this has shed some light on when to expect the pandemic to end or come to a reasonable status here in the United States, and what you can do to make sure you are safe. Thank you so much. Please do subscribe to our channel, and we will see you next time.